Hello, everyone, and welcome to Philia for the Unknown. Join me today as we dive into the true heartbreaking story of three boys who went on an innocent walk one Sunday afternoon, unaware that tragedy was about to strike them and their families. This is the true story of the tragedy at the Darwen Moors. Darwen Moors is located near the town of Darwen, south of Blackburn, in the eastern part of Lancashire County, England. As a section of the West Pennine Moors, it is primarily characterized as a blanket bog, a wet, acidic peatland ecosystem that supports diverse wildlife and plays a crucial role in carbon storage. Today, Darwen Moors is a popular destination for outdoor enthusiasts, including walkers, hikers, and cyclists, and those seeking leisure time with nature. The area is home to the iconic Jubilee Tower, offering breathtaking views of the surrounding Lancashire countryside. However, this wasn't the same until the late 19th century when entry to this area was prohibited. Up until the 1870s, the Darwen Moors was owned by a landowner, the Reverend William Arthur Duckworth. He always attempted to prohibit people from entering the moors by hiring gamekeepers to deter those who tried to enter it. Many locals objected to the landowner's restriction, arguing that historical rights of way were their legal entitlement to roam the moors. Following several legal struggles, the moors were granted to Darwen authorities in the late 1870s. Finally, in 1896, a parliamentary order was signed to grant the complete right of access to the moors. The Darwen Council then began the construction of the Jubilee Tower, or Darwen Tower, at Darwen Moors in 1897, in order to commemorate the Diamond Jubilee celebrations of Queen Victoria, and also to celebrate it as a symbol of the right of free public access to the moors. The tower finally completed construction in September 1898, with its official opening ceremony on September 24, 1898. Since then, Darwen Moor has become a favorite spot for many to have some quality time with nature. However, the primary concern at the moors is the highly unpredictable weather, particularly in winter, when heavy blizzards can make entry extremely dangerous. Over 100 years ago, when the moors first opened to the public, they were far more treacherous than today. The rough walkways and hidden dangers at every turn made it easy to lose one's way, especially for those unfamiliar with the terrain. And then that is where our story begins of the Darwen boys. In 1917, England was a nation grappling with the harsh realities of World War I, and many young men in Britain were being sent to the battlefields to fight, and people were living in uncertainty of their loved ones returning home. Amidst the chaos of war in the small town of Darwen in Lancashire, which was no less affected by the war, there lived three boys. William Cooper Longton was 18 years old, Ralph Bolton was 16 years old, and Ralph's cousin, James Bolton, was 10 years old. The three boys were the only sons of their respective families. Although nothing much is known about their childhood and family, it is known that William Longton and Ralph Bolton were part of the Church Lads Brigade and in the church choir at St. Barnabas Church at Darwen. And also, William had been the secretary of the Sunday school. And also, William was due to join the army in just a few weeks. Ralph Bolton's father was serving in the First World War in France, and James Bolton's father had been killed in action in July of 1916. On the afternoon of December 16, 1917, the three boys had just finished Sunday school, and just around a couple of hours were left for dusk to set in when the three boys decided to go to the Darwen Moors for an afternoon walk. And they seemed full of adventure and wanted to have a good time in the snow. On that day, the weather was exceptionally chaotic, to a fierce blizzard that had swept through the town of Darwen and continued to rage across the moors as well. It was said to have been one of the most ferocious blizzards the town had seen for years. The three Darwen boys were, although very familiar with the moors, but they were unprepared and were not expecting to face such an extreme weather. It remains unknown as to why did the boys want to go out to the Darwen Moor in such a dangerous weather, and with dusk almost about to set in, but it does seem that the boys lost their way and had taken a wrong turn due to the heavy snow. The conditions were highly challenging, with snowdrifts measuring up to 10 feet. As night fell and the boys failed to arrive home, their families grew increasingly worried due to the harsh weather outside, and they maintained a sense of optimism, believing that they had secured shelter and would return safe and sound from their ordeal. However, as that did not happen, and the boys did not return home the entire night, that is when, on the following Monday morning, it was decided that a search and rescue operation would be carried out by regular police officers, special constables, and civilian volunteers. Despite extensive searching of the area where the boys were last sighted, as well as other locations, there was no sign of the boys on Monday. On Tuesday afternoon, a tragic discovery was made. The body of William Cooper Longton was found to the south of the abandoned Old Lions Farm, along the Cadshaw Brook and a short distance from Bull Hill. He was lying face down in the snow with his hands over his face. The news of this discovery amplified fears for the safety of the other two boys. And their fears were confirmed when, on Wednesday, as the weather subsided, just around 200 yards away from the Old Lions Farm, the body of Ralph Bolton was found lying on his back, frozen to death, being fully clothed except for his topcoat, which was missing. Just around 400 yards away, the body of James Bolton was discovered. He was found lying on his back, completely buried under the snow with just a foot sticking out in the protection of a low stone wall, and he had his cousin Ralph Bolton's topcoat wrapped around him. It was evident that the boys had lost their way and had succumbed to exhaustion and hypothermia. Unfortunately, the surrounding farmhouses were all closed off and unoccupied at that time due to a dispute regarding land allocation. The deep snowdrifts also made it impossible to locate the footpath. With the discovery of the bodies at various distances, it was believed that the boys were together until William went off to get assistance at the farm. As he failed to return, Ralph Bolton then wrapped his overcoat over his brother James and went to seek help before collapsing on the ground. The act of Ralph Bolton wrapping his little brother in his topcoat was seen as a selfless act of courage by many, despite the extreme cold, doing the best he could to keep his little cousin brother safe. This made the story even more poignant to many people. Interestingly, a badge with the phrase, "Fight the good fight," was discovered in the pocket of Ralph's coat. And later, the Darwen News reported that he had done just that. On that Wednesday night, the Church Lads Brigade organized a farewell gathering to honor William, who had been called to military service. The next day, an inquest was carried out, and the coroner commented that it had been a terrible catastrophe and hoped that it would alert others to stay away from the moors in such adverse weather. The inquest jury concluded that the boys perished from exhaustion during a snowstorm while they were lost on the Darwen moors, and they ended their statement by extending their condolences to the heartbroken parents. The funeral service of all three boys took place together on Saturday, December 22nd at St. Barnabas Church, and it was crowded with hundreds of mourners. The most poignant presence was the mother of James Bolton, Mrs. Nancy Bolton, whose husband had been killed in France in 1916 and now had lost her only son at just 10 years old. The route to the cemetery as well was lined by hundreds of mourners, with their sorrow exacerbated by the ongoing bloody war and the selfless act of heroism by 16-year-old Ralph Bolton. William was buried with his grandparents, and the Bolton cousins were interred together just a few yards away. The gravestone of Ralph Bolton displays a verse from the Bible, from John 15 verse 13, saying, "Greater love hath no man than he who layeth down his life for another." The tragedy was indeed a mystery, and it does seem likely that it was caused by a wrong turn being taken by the boys. And it was also later believed that the Bolton cousins had an uncle living at Duckshaw Farm, and it was possible that the cousins may have been heading there. But that remains unclear, and it is possible that it could have been just a misadventure due to the weather. Within a few days, the tragedy of the Darwen boys was soon forgotten, as the First World War was still raging, and many people were losing loved ones on the battlefields. In most recent years, new information has revealed that the weather was actually very bright and sunny on that Sunday afternoon of December 16th, 1917, and there was actually no sign of snow, and then only as dusk began to set in that the blizzard struck quickly. Thus, it remains unclear if the weather was actually fine that day, and did it just become extreme during the evening, or was the weather actually harsh right from the morning itself? Thank you so much for watching. I will be bringing more lesser-known true cases for you to feed your philia for the unknown. Until then, take care and stay safe.